So some biological factors that limit population growth in foraging societies are the low caloric intake and high energy rate needed for female foraging. Um, Essentially, in foraging societies, they take in the same amount of calories that they put out. This means that Hmong women, in particular, don't start menstruating until age 16 and a half, about on average. And in the US, the average is about 13 years old. So they aren't going to have kids until then, um, for some cultural reasons, like frequently they're not considered eligible to start having children until after they begin menstruating. So that age means that they'll have fewer years to have children essentially. Also, breastfeeding in these societies, nursing usually lasts for 3 to 4 years, and it can space out pregnancies. Nursing can keep women from ovulating so they can't get pregnant again. This isn't always the case. So it can space out pregnancies, which again means they're having less children, so the population isn't growing quite as much. Some foraging technologies. These technologies are highly adaptive to their particular ecological conditions. So, in the US, we're a post-industrial society, and we have a lot of different biomes, a lot of different climate areas, but a lot of our technologies are pretty similar throughout. That's not the case in foraging societies. If one society lives in the tundra, like the Inuit, and one society lives in the Great Basin, like the Shoshone, they're going to have vastly different technologies to cope with different environments. This requires extensive cultural knowledge of environmental conditions and how to adapt to them. Here on your screen, you see a Shoshone encampment. So some of their technology involves teepees, which are made with wood frames and also leather around the outside. So a lot of knowledge goes into that, how to build something that can be broken down easily, how to process leather, all of these things. And earlier you saw a rainforest dwelling, which was sort of open on one side completely because they don't have to deal with the same types of, like wind or cold that the Shoshone have to deal with in the Great Basin and Wyoming in this particular picture. Here you see some Hmong tribesmen hunting with their bows and arrows. So that's some of their technology. Some examples of goods or physical aspects of technology. The Hmong use small bows and arrows like you just saw, and spears. The Orente use boomerangs, which do not return to you. Spears and atlatls, or spear throwers. This is a movie that you should check out. Not a movie, a little short YouTube video that you should check out about spear throwers. And think about the different cultural knowledge as well as the different, physical objects that go into making and using spear throwers. The Mabudi in Central Africa, they use wooden spears and arrow tips. The Semang, they use blowguns, and in general, these people use fishing hooks, digging sticks, net bags, bark, wooden bowls, and modified ostrich eggs. So, particularly among the Hmong, they will find an ostrich egg, drill a little hole, poke a little hole in one end, scramble up the egg while it's inside, pour it out, and cook it to eat it, and then use the empty ostrich eggs as a canteen until they break, at which point women will use them to adorn themselves, little pieces of shell to adorn themselves. Examples of cultural knowledge as technology. Edible plants is a big one. Where to find them, when they grow, which are scarce and plentiful because you don't want to pick any particular type of food, so you want to make sure it comes back season after season. And which parts are poisonous. There are many different types of plants where certain parts are edible and certain ones are poisonous. And then they actually do want to know more about natural poisons for hunting. So they want to know about poisons that they can use to help them kill an animal, but that when they eat that animal won't kill them as well. Inuit technologies are very complex. They make tools and equipment out of bone, stone, skin, wood, and ice. So a little bit different than the other ones that we talked about before. They've got a whole lot of like physical technologies, as well as cultural knowledge needed to live in the tundra. They have kayaks, dog sleds, lances, fishing spears, soapstone lamps for heating or cooking, and for light, snow goggles. Here are some images. Up in the left-hand corner of your screen, you see the dog sleds they use for transportation. Just below that, kayak and some spear for hunting in the water. Down at the bottom center, some points for hunting. Then you see the man wearing snow goggles so he doesn't go snow blind. Snow is very reflective of light, so you need protection for your eyes. And then at the top right, you'll see the soapstone lamp. So they use that for heating and cooking and light. So subsistence, demographics, and technology and tribes. The woman and child are from the Yanomamo, the rainforest, the Amazon rainforest, and then the man and child with the reindeer are Sami of northern Europe. They're reindeer herders. There are two types, sort of overarching methods of subsistence in tribal societies. There are horticulturalists, and they do a sort of small-scale agriculture. They use limited, non-mechanized technology to grow plants. A common form of this is swidden, or also known as slash and burn agriculture, and I'll be posting a video about that so you can take a look at what that looks like. It's usually done in nitrogen-poor soil, and it's a delicate balance because you need to be able to control the fire and make sure it doesn't get out of hand. So what they do is they cut down a bunch of foliage in wherever they are. Usually this happens in the rainforest. And then they burn it all, and then all of that burnt foliage has nitrogen in it and other good things for the soil, so they use that to plant their large gardens. Compared to foraging societies, the horticulturalists are generally more sedentary. They don't move around quite as much. They do still move, just not as much. Rainforest horticulturalists, like the Yanomamo, who you saw the woman and child before, in the Amazon, they're also called the Yanomami. 80 to 90% of their diet comes from that swidden agriculture, that slash and burn agriculture. Men will clear and burn, and I believe also plant the field, and then women will tend and harvest. Then their additional food comes from hunting and gathering. So women will also gather some berries and things like that, and men will hunt for meat or fish for meat. They move around mainly due to warfare and politics, not so much needing the soil to, not so much because they're outstripping the soil. The Tsimbaga of Papua New Guinea, they cultivate mountainsides, and again, men and women work together to cultivate it, and then women Again, tenant harvest. And this accounts for 99% of their diet. So what they grow is pretty much exclusively what they eat, except they eat domesticated pigs on ritual occasions. So things like weddings, rites of passages, festivals, that's the only time they'll eat domesticated pigs. Temperate deciduous forest horticulturalists don't really exist much anymore. We live in a temperate deciduous forest region, so they were basically kicked out of their area. An example of this are the Haudenosaunee. You might know them as the Iroquois. They grew maize, beans, squash, and other native crops. The men also hunted and fished. And they would only move once a generation. How they would do that was they would, clear an area for their gardens. And when they, used that until it could be used no more, they went a little bit further, and so on and so on, until it was sort of too far for them to be coming back to their encampment. And then they would move where they lived and start going out from there. And then there are pastoralists, the other main method of subsistence in tribal societies. So pastoralists are groups whose subsistence is based around limited domestication of animals. The use of the animal varies depending on the animal and the society, and some groups even herd multiple types of animals. Animals provide everything for these people. So, clothing, food, transportation, pretty much everything. Most pastoralists migrate vast distances for seasonal grazing and water. So they're not so much in real control over the animals. They sort of follow them around depending on the society. Some desert pastoralists, the Bedouin of the Middle Eastern deserts, they are camel herders. They use camels for transport. They have camel hair tents, and they sometimes consume the meat of the camels. Northern coniferous / tundra / steppes, these people are wide-ranging. Reindeer herders like the Sami, Taigana, and Ebony once relied on reindeer exclusively. They used the leather for shelter, clothing. They would eat the meat. They would drink the milk and eat the cheese that they made from the milk, and they used them to remain mobile. They had sleighs that they would hook up to the reindeer, and etc. The average population size for horticulturalists anywhere between 100 to 5,000 people, and pastoralists around 2,000. Now, again, these can break into smaller groups and larger groups depending on season or things like that. They're relatively settled within defined territories, so they move around a bit. Pastoralists, obviously much more than horticulturalists, but they remain within defined territories. They've got slow population growth because of limited resources again, and their regulation strategies include fissioning, abstinence, infanticide, abortion, and prolonged period of nursing, quite like the hunter-gathering societies. Their technology, this is an example of a Haudenosaunee or Iroquois longhouse, which theoretically you learned about at some point in school. And before I go on, I'll just do that in the next video. So here we go.